We've talked about who's the next best fit for Alabama as it pertains to their next head coach. But here's something that I think we should do together. Who wouldn't make sense to be Alabama's next head coach? We're seeing a lot of hot boards. We're seeing a lot of names thrown out there. And we may end up looking back at this thing, and it may be someone who gets hired that's on this list we're about to unpack right now. But I think as, we're less than 24 hours away, separated from Nick Saban announcing his retirement, I think we can kind of all together start to whittle down this pool as to who would be a little bit surprising if they were to be hired as the next head coach at Alabama. Now, I want to make sure we make a full disclaimer here. This is not us saying on this show that these individuals we're about to talk about could not work and be successful at Alabama. They absolutely could, but for the reasons we're about to get into, it would be surprising if they were to be hired at Alabama. And the first one is Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney, you could see the reason why he would be in that conversation. Alabama alum, he coached there. He's won multiple national championships, so he's got some skins on the wall. My thing from Alabama is you have an opportunity to buy the hottest stock in college football. And I look at Dabo Swinney's stock. If this was 2019, hire him in a heartbeat. But you look at what Clemson has been the last couple of years, and they haven't been bad by any stretch of the imagination. But you have seen a slow but sure decline and a downtrend in what they've been. And I think the major concern would be Dabo Swinney adapting to what college football is right now. We see the refusal to really use the transfer portal. We see the issues they've had at the skill positions, and you wonder if that's a, philosophical recruiting error. All that's to say, I think you have an opportunity to go with a more surefire thing and a more rising stock than what Dabo Swinney has been. Again, if they hire him, more power to him. He has the resume and the track record that speaks for itself. But given the most recent sample size, it would surprise me if they were to hire him away from Clemson. Now, the next name, this is a name that gets thrown out pretty much every single coaching search, but he's always been linked to the Alabama job. Lane Kiffin. Spent time with Nick Saban as an offensive coordinator, so he's been around the process, had success at Ole Miss, having success at Ole Miss right now. He's got two 10-win seasons over the last 3 years. Just won a New Year's Six Bowl. Again, the resume is there. But I think this is important for us to remember when it comes to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin thrives doing things Lane Kiffin's way, and that is not a shot at Lane Kiffin at all. But when you look at how Alabama operates, I think if you go to Alabama as the head coach, you would do things in some way, shape, or form within the confines of how Alabama operates. Lane Kiffin's going to kind of do his thing on Twitter. He's going to attack the portal. He's going to recruit a certain way. I'm not saying he couldn't recruit well at Alabama, but I think there is potential, if you were to hire him, for this to be the most violent switch up from the way Nick Saban does things. No nonsense, gonna keep it all buttoned up. He's probably not hitting the Twitter sphere too much, to Lane Kiffin, who, again, it's a loose operation. It works for him. It works for Ole Miss, but I don't see it being a stylistic fit for Alabama. So I would be surprised if they went with Lane Kiffin. Now, Deion Sanders, fun name to talk about now. You see him and Nick Saban doing the Aflac commercials, chopping it up. We just said we think Nick Saban's going to be pretty heavily involved as to who they do go after next, and maybe that relationship equates to Deion Sanders being talked about in Tuscaloosa. But for me, here, I want to make sure I approach this the right way. There's a lot of risk involved with Deion Sanders. Outside of his success at Jackson State, he has one season of a sample size to go off of at Colorado as an FBS head coach. He was 4-8. And so I think, going back to what we just said, at Alabama, you don't have to have hardly any risk with the next guy that you hire. I think Deion Sanders, as much as there's that boom factor for him, as much as there's the potential of what he could be as a head coach, and as much as what he would attract when it comes to the talent side of things, you would attract top-tier talent without a question if Deion Sanders is your next head coach at Alabama. But the risk involved with that, I think, would be a reason why I couldn't see this being a fit for Deion Sanders in Alabama. Now, if he were to have success the next couple of years and he goes on and wins a couple conference championships and then the job becomes available in a couple of years at Alabama, maybe this is a different conversation. But for me, Deion Sanders would be a little bit surprising. Now, the last name here that you're going to see on some hot boards that I think doesn't make a ton of sense is Kalen DeBoer, head coach at Washington. Went to the national championship, is a culture guy, has won pretty much everywhere he's been, has the same agent as Nick Saban and Jimmy Sexton, so wouldn't be surprised if at the very least we see Jimmy Sexton kind of hoist his name into those conversations. But like, I think experience in the SEC is going to be important for whoever they hire next. And I don't mean experience as a head coach in the SEC. I don't know if it's quite as rigid as that, but I think understanding what Alabama is and having an intimate knowledge of Alabama as a whole for what you're signing up for. Not saying Kalen DeBoer couldn't be wildly successful, because I think he could. But the fit to me would feel a little bit weird from Alabama. I would also ask you this question. If Washington lost on the last play to Texas, is Kalen DeBoer still in consideration for this head coaching job by some people? If Washington were to lose in the Pac-12 championship to Oregon and they can't hold them off and they find a way to lose that game, is Kalen DeBoer still in contention for this head coaching job? What I'm trying to say is I think we're really falling in love with the one-year success that Washington had. And I'm not speaking ill of Washington. The way that Kalen DeBoer has taken that roster and went and got Michael Penix Jr. and all those things, it deserves a ton of credit and a ton of praise. But going back to this job, I think the risk involved with the Kalen DeBoer would be a little bit curious to me. So those are the names that I would be surprised if they were to end up being hired at Alabama. But again, we'll keep an eye on this. As soon as we get a hire, we will talk about it on this very show, on the Hard Count, the On3 YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a minute of it. But those are all names that would be surprising to me. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of the Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.